del podcast, sono qui con un altro episodio, un ragazzo che ha fatto molto parlare di sé, ragazzo, per modo di dire, che ha fatto parlare molto di sé nel mondo del web, è molto molto famoso per le sue prestazioni, in particolare per lo stacco da terra, adesso ne parleremo molto. Spero di riuscire a pronunciare correttamente il suo nome più volte, le ho chiesto ovviamente il permesso su come si pronuncia correttamente. Però sono qui con Danny, io d'ora in avanti chiamerò Danny perché il cognome ho paura di dirlo in maniera scorretta e non vorrei mai. Danny è un ragazzo che è estremamente forte in tutte le alzate, ma in particolare nello stacco è qualcosa di spaventoso perché se non mi ricordo male detiene diversi record del mondo, mi pare una cosa come 13 record del mondo nel powerlifting, in particolare 1074 libbre di stacco da terra fatti ufficialmente in gara, quindi è una cosa pazzesca. L'idea è come sempre di fare un po' di avanti e indietro con le domande, lui parlerà in inglese e dopo farò un piccolo riassunto traduzione e dopo andiamo avanti. Hello Danny, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Danny Grigsby. I've been competing about a decade now. I have several records all time in deadlift, 242, 275, 308 all time records. 242 is 1,030, 275 is 1,074, 308 is 1,025 right now, and I hold the heaviest. 1,074 is the heaviest deadlift, regardless of weight class.
Wow. You in total you have something like 13, 12 world records?
12 world records.
Oh, I didn't know you competed also in the 308.
Yeah, I've only done that once. I naturally sit at like 100, 121, 122 kilos. I'm not a full 275er. I only did that because the record back then was the record at the time was 940. This was, I knew I could easily get it. I just had to bulk up. So I was 122 kilos and I drank a gallon of water before weigh-ins. So I got to like 277. Then I pissed it all out.
Of course, the other way.
Yeah.
So the 1074 is in the 275 class. Okay, and in 308 what is your record in the 308?
1,025.
1,025. Okay. And what in the 242 class?
I believe it's 1,035. Yeah.
1,035. I'm writing notes because I'm sure I will forget about this. So let's have a little bit of math here because I'm not used to pounds. 1,074 is like 470 kilos, something like that.
Wait a second. It's 488 kilos.
Whoa, 488. Wow. And you still have the full meet total record, right?
No, so
No?
I totaled 2,303 pounds, and the record's 2320. But held by a guy named Zach Myers. I'm going to compete against him in a few weeks. He's a stud. Like this guy, he's like really well rounded. He's probably going to squat over 900. He could bench mid 600s, and his deadlift is starting to improve. Like his deadlift used to be his weakness, but now he's capable of mid to high 800s. So it's going to be a tall task. Like last year, he broke the record, but he had 5 of 9 attempts. He didn't get most of his thirds. That'll be fun because I'm going to do my best to keep up with him. But man, it's a tough task.
Okay, just give me a moment for a little bit of translation. Ho chiesto a Dani un pochino di farmi un riepilogo della situazione attuale per quanto riguarda i suoi record, le sue prestazioni nel powerlifting, e allora mi sono scritto giù 2 note perché sennò non ci sto dietro. Allora, lui sostanzialmente ha gareggiato in 3 categorie di peso diverse, adesso parlo in libre, nella 242, nella 275 e nella 308 libre, che sono circa categorie di peso 110, 120 e qualcosina, 125 tipo, no 122 forse, e 130 105, 140, no, sì, 140 kg la categoria dei pesi massimi. Portate pazienza per le conversioni. E ha 13 record in totale a suo nome, in particolare lo stacco. Lo stacco è famosissimo per lo stacco perché il suo stacco migliore che abbia mai fatto è 1074 libbre, che sono 488 kg, e l'ha fatto curiosamente nella categoria di peso intermedio, quindi nel 275 libbre. Nella categoria di peso più pesante, in realtà ha fatto un po' meno di stacco, e mi ha detto che l'ha fatto, è salito di categoria solo per prendere il record, perché sapeva che l'avrebbe potuto prendere facilmente, ma in realtà lui tendenzialmente sarebbe sui 120 e qualcosa chili. Mentre nella 242 libbre ha 1035 libbre di record, che è un po' più basso, che comunque sono cifre mostruose. Fra un paio di settimane gareggerà, e mi diceva che lui non detiene attualmente il record di totale nelle categorie, ma solo di stacco, perché appunto è detenuto da un altro ragazzo contro cui gareggerà adesso. Ok, will you mind to tell me a little bit about the history of your deadlift strength?
Yeah, definitely. That's something I don't talk about a lot. So, I started lifting 12, 13 years old and lifted for sports such as American football, track and field, baseball, basketball. That was why I started lifting. And in high school, so when I was 17, 18, I think I did a lot of clean and jerk and snatches back then. Didn't do a lot of deadlifts, but I think the most I ever deadlifted was like 100, 150 to 160 kilos probably. Um, Now I wasn't training deadlift a lot once again, so I mean it was low, but it's because it wasn't a primary thing I did. And then once I left high school, I did a year of college football, and after that I decided I didn't want to do football anymore. So I started deadlifting again, and within a few months I was deadlifting around 600, or what is that,
288.
270? Yeah,
Yeah,
280, yeah.
270, 270.
And yeah, that was my first meet because I was lifting fun for a few months. Then there's a competition in my local gym, and they asked me to do it. So I said, okay, I'll try this. And I pulled 600. Was pretty happy with that. And then fast forward like 6 months later, uh, in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I basically just rode the weight. Didn't really understand how your hamstrings, glutes, all that ties into deadlift. But probably like 5, 6 months later, I pulled 700 for the first time. And this is when I was still doing conventional. I did conventional my first 3 years. Yeah. So I got to 325 kg conventional. This was when I was 19. And then from there, this is where it got rocky though, because like I thought I was gonna keep going. Like you think you're gonna keep improving at the same rate because you get when you first start lifting, you get gains very quickly, but then you're gonna hit plateaus. So I got to 700 and then 750 that next year. But then from there, it took me between 3 and 4 years to get from 750 to 800. And a lot of that had to do with, at 20 years old, I joined the military. I'm about to leave the military in a few weeks, but I'll have been in 8 years. And the first year or two, it's like I tell people recovery and all these things play a key role because when I joined the military, my whole schedule changed. I was running every day, running miles a day, working pretty long days. Diet was hit and miss. It wasn't great. Hydration, sleep, all these things were not very optimal. So didn't really improve for a few years because, I mean, I joined the military because I didn't know what I want to do in my life and I need to figure it out. So lifting got kind of put on the back burner for that time being. I was still lifting, but I was realistic. Like if my body was really beat up, I wasn't going to push it because I'm not trying to get injured. So from 2015 to 2018, I was stuck at 750-pound deadlift. And then 2019, I finally break 800 in a competition. And from that point on, my situation changed where I didn't run as much. I could recover better. My body was more fresh. It's like you can only get away with a certain kind of lifestyle for so long before, once you get past the newbie phase and you're intermediate or you've been lifting 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you got to dial in all these little factors because, yeah, you're not just going to keep on improving if you sleep 2-3 hours. I'm not saying I did that all the time, but like certain factors where it's like you can't really overcome that. And yeah, 2020 broke my first 2 all-time records at 275 with let me do it in kilos real fast. With a 425 and 430 kilo deadlifts. At the time, the record at 275 was like 420 kilos. So that's when I started to realize, okay, I need to take the diet, the recovery more seriously because, yeah, you can't, when you get at that level, you can't just gap things off. And like, once you get more refined in the lifting and you've been doing it for a certain amount of time, whether your goal is to gain muscle, lose fat, get stronger, you got to be consistent with all these things because it adds up, you know, even to this day. Like if I have a week where some of those things, I don't sleep very well or the diet's not very good, it affects me. I notice it in the gym and then afterwards I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really eat a lot today. Like that plays a big role at this point for me. So, and 20 in 2021, I pulled 970 pounds. That was about a year and a half later. And then at that point, I was like, you know, in 2 years, if I could pull 1,000, that'd be great. Because I'm very realistic with. I tell people it's good to have huge goals, but also, in my experience, you make the most progress when it's okay to have a lofty goal, but you're focused on the process. Because if you just deadlift 700 and then it's like, okay, when am I going to do 800? Like you're going to probably not overtrain, but like it's better to be like, oh, if I could just put 5 kilos on a training cycle or 6 months, a more sustainable approach. Because when you don't feel the pressure to add too much weight to the bar, it seems to naturally happen that way. Because then the next year I pulled 1,000, right? Because I was like, you know what? I'm giving myself 2+ years to get to 1,000, no rush, but I'm just going to work on my weaknesses. I'm going to be consistent, and you know I'm going to keep improving. But then it always happens when you least expect it to. I swear, lifting and life, anything like when you least expect something to happen, it just kind of happens because when you're in the moment enjoying something and you do all the little things, it's going to add up, right? You don't know when it's going to be, and that's kind
Like
of been my
pregnancy.
experience.
Like pregnancy.
Yeah, I haven't experienced one of those yet, thankfully, but yeah,
Thankfully.
I haven't. Yeah, that was. I want kids someday, but yeah,
Just
that was.
joking. Just joking.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting because your starting point, like 600 pounds, is similar to most people and goals. So that's funny. This tells a lot about your genetics.
Yeah, I think because speaking of which, it's funny because people always tell me, you know, you have long arms, and you know, I've measured them countless times, and I really don't because I'm 5'11". That's like I don't know what metric that is for you
One,
guys.
178, 179, like a little bit shy of 180, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my height, and my wingspan is literally 1 to 2 inches more than my height. So I'm 5'11", and I think it's hard because when you measure it, you have to have someone else do it, and sometimes they don't measure it briefly. But my wingspan is not really that crazy for my height, but it's like, but my torso. That's why my arms, when I stand up, they're like at my right towards my knees because you don't need. I don't think you need long arms to be a good deadlifter, but other things such as your torso and femur heights, that plays more of a role because you see a lot of great deadlifters, they have compact torsos because it gets them close to the bar, right? So even if I didn't have the torso I did, but I had like 5 inches longer my arms, I don't think that'd be more of an advantage, you know? Like obviously you don't want to have stubby arms. I mean,
Of
obviously
course.
yeah, I mean, but in every lift, when you see people at the highest level, they tend to have similar. It's just like in any sport. It's like you look at swimming. All the best swimmers literally have lengthy, the type of body types you'd expect swimmers to have, because like it's catered towards that endeavor. And it's like, if you want to play basketball and you're 5'5", I mean, there's probably been someone who's done it, but like, good luck. I mean, the average height in the NBA is like 6'5", 6'6", So, because people say, oh, well, that person's just gifted to do that lift, so of course they're going to be successful. But it's like powerlifting's like this niche sport, whereas in other sports, it's kind of like that's just like obvious. Like, of course, like, I mean, it doesn't help me out for bench, unfortunately. Like, I'm getting better at bench. Obviously, not known for bench press. I'm a pretty decent squatter, I feel. But great benchers normally have small joints, wider chests. Like, I've seen it time and time again where you just look at someone, I'm like, I bet you he's a pretty good bencher or squat. Like, he has the potential at least, because just because you have these intangibles doesn't automatically mean you're gonna be the best.
Of course.
The amount of people I've seen where I'm like, that person could be a great deadlifter, but they're not yet. It's just like you can only go so much off of raw talent and, like I said, tangibles. Because I think that's what got me early on too, was like I knew I was kind of catered towards deadlift, so like I just assumed it would keep coming easy. But once I hit some plateaus, and that was a good learning experience for me. Is like I said, the 3-4 years when I was stuck trying to get to 800, because I got to 600 and 700 relatively easy, and I almost was relying too much on just my natural ability. But then I had to be like, okay, like, if I want to get better, I have to do something different, because, you can't do what you always done and expect a different outcome,
Faccio un attimo un riassunto dello storico dell'allenamento su, gli ho chiesto un pochino come è andato negli anni. Allora, sostanzialmente mi ha detto che gareggia da tanto tempo e si allena soprattutto da molto prima di diventare, diciamo, competitivo e famoso. Ha iniziato come molti altri ragazzi americani in high school facendo clean and jerk e non facendo lo stacco, perché faceva molto poco stacco. Poi ha detto che ha iniziato a provare e la prima volta che ha provato attenzione, non è che non si era mai allenato o non si fosse mai allenato. La prima volta che si è messo seriamente a fare stacco e dopo un po' ci ha tirato massimale, ha fatto 600 libbre, che sono tipo 270-280 kg. 5 mesi dopo ha fatto 700 libbre, che sono 317 kg mi sembra. Questo è tutto regular e aveva 19 anni. E poi da 700-750 libbre, da quel range lì a 800 libbre, ci ha messo circa 3-4 anni di tempo per passare. Ha detto che lì è stato un po' un periodo dove si è un po' arenato, nel senso che ovviamente ha talento, ovviamente ha portato tutto quello che vuoi, però lì ha visto che sostanzialmente la forza bruta, le leve e tutto quanto l'hanno portato solo fin lì, e lì ha dovuto iniziare un attimino, ha dovuto mettersi un attimo a fare le cose più seriamente. Nel 2019 ha fatto i suoi primi 800 libri in gara, che sono 362 kg. Però c'è stato un cambiamento anche di stile di vita, nel senso che lui comunque nell'esercito, per tutta una serie di motivi, non poteva dedicarsi unicamente all'allenamento, doveva un po' comunque fare dei compromessi anche con la corsa, con il sonno, mille altre cose, stare attento a non farsi male, e questo gli impediva tanto di portare avanti i progressi. E infatti dopo, quando è riuscito nel tempo a gestire meglio queste cose qua, ha avuto dei miglioramenti. Però ovviamente finiti i famosi New Games, dopo le cose vanno molto più a rilento, e nel 2020 ha fatto il suo primo record di stacco, record del mondo. Questo è un po' più o meno lo storico. Poi abbiamo parlato un attimino di genetica, levi, queste cose qui. Lui è sostanzialmente alto 5 piedi e 11, che dovrebbe essere, mi pare, vado a spanne, non ammazzatemi, 178 cm o giù di lì, appena sotto il 1,80 dovrebbe essere, e per 120 qualcosa chili. Però diceva che le sue braccia non sono così lunghe come si potrebbe pensare, e che sì, sono lunghe, ma sono un paio di... cioè da indice a indice, no, l'ampiezza non è così tanto più alta della sua altezza, quindi non è in realtà così tanto lunghe, che sono così tanto lunghe le braccia. Però è il rapporto anche tra gli altri segmenti, soprattutto tra le gambe e il busto, che secondo lui gli dà il vantaggio più grande. E ovviamente dopo gli dà degli altri svantaggi su altre cose, infatti diceva che di panca è l'alzata che fa un po' più fatica, come è normale aspettarsi. Ok, and what about your body weight during all these years?
Yeah, so when I first started powerlifting, I was around 103 kilos. Yeah, somewhere in that range. And then like 2013, and over those next 4 or 5 years, up until 2018, I started getting around 110 kilo. And after that, I slowly started build like every year I was gaining 2, 3 kilos to where now I sit around 118 to 122 kilo. It ranges. Like when I'm not in a meet prep, I like to actually lose some weight just for health reasons because I have a CPAP now because I have sleep apnea, and a lot of it has to do with the neck. Like I get a big when I start gaining weight, my neck gets bigger, and that just makes sleep harder. So if I don't have a competition in the near future, then I'll get down to like 100, like I said, lower even up to 115 kilo because it's easy. I could gain the weight back relatively quickly. I know that's weird. Most people wouldn't see it like that, but I feel better when I'm lighter. You know, it's just I'm not like overly big by any means, but everybody once you get to a certain weight for your frame, I mean things like blood pressure too. Yeah, like blood pressure could get high, especially during a meet prep once I'm bigger. So I like to just kind of mitigate some of those things if I can. But realistically, once I'm done with powerlifting, I want to cut like 10 to 15 kilos. That's not going to be for 4 or 5 years. That's way down the road. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I miss being like 100 kilo because like I was decently strong. My endurance was great. Like you know, I was like the best of all worlds. And now obviously my endurance and stuff isn't as good being over 120 kilo. You know, even if you're not fat, I mean, it's still weight. Like muscle is still
Of
weight. You
course.
know, it's still weight on your frame. So
Mhm. Ok, ho chiesto com'è stato un po' lo storico del suo peso corporeo, mi ha detto che nel 2013 pesava circa 102-103 kg e poi gradualmente è salito e adesso sta tra i 118 e i 122, ricordiamo che è sotto il 1,80 m o comunque non più di 1,80 m e mi diceva che lui tendenzialmente sta un pelo più leggero lontano dalle gare, perde qualche chilo e può scendere anche addirittura a 115 kg e sale un pochino vicino alle gare e fa questa cosa qui perché sta più comodo, si sente meglio, un po' più leggero e anche per questioni di salute, per pressione arteriosa, per il discorso di dormire, perché ha detto che ha apnee notturne per, insomma, per il peso e dimensioni del collo e quindi deve dormire con la CPAP, con la macchinetta per l'ossigeno, come praticamente tutti quelli sopra un certo peso corporeo. E quindi insomma stava più comodo in realtà quando era più leggero, diceva che era un po' un compromesso anche tra la resistenza e la forza. Ok, are you comfortable with talking about special supplements or not?
uh no, just for the
Ok,
time
no,
being, maybe in the future. Yeah.
ok,
Yeah.
don't mind. Um, let's talk about the way you trained and used to train deadlift in the past and now. So
Mhm.
let's forget about your first years, like when you were a teenager. And sorry, how old are you again?
I'm 29.
Oh, 29. Okay. Let's forget the youngest days in which you were just
Uh-huh.
strong because you're strong. And let's talk about from like 750 pounds on, so we can understand better the way you train. So how the training changed during these years?
Yeah, so the last few years, because I remember I've been with my coach since 2020. Her name is Casey. She lives in Florida. And I used to do very, very like a lot more little lower volume because it got me to where I was, you know. And obviously I was like, oh, I'm already at this level. You know, I don't need to do anything different. I'm already like the guy, right? But then she had started having me doing not an astronomical amount of volume. Like my top sets 1 to 3 reps normally, and then I do 3 back down sets of, you know, could be 5, 7, 6s. And I never did that before because you got to think you have to build up enough of a base of your work capacity, and if you don't do that, you're kind of going to be running yourself into the ground. So that was a huge change for me. Was when I say doing more volume, I did very, very little volume before. So it wasn't even like most people would be like, oh, like 4 sets of deadlifts, that's not a big deal. And then I like doing RDLs or sometimes like pause deadlifts, things like that. Um, but yeah, that was a big game changer for me because once I started doing more consistent reps, that's what got me over 1,000 and got me to now where I'm in the sights of potentially doing 1,100 very soon. Because if I would have just stuck with the same mindset and done, because I used to do like one working set of 1 to 3 deadlifts, maybe one back down, and then just like do like a bodybuilding workout afterwards. I was just all about, just getting a pump and stuff. I kind of had a mindset of a bro lifter who just so happened to do compound movements first. I wasn't really putting the attention on the like, and it's funny because most people are the opposite. Most people don't want to do accessories. They're just all about the compound movements. They'll put out in the compound movements and then don't really try, doing barbell rows and hamstring curls, all this stuff. I've always been the opposite. So actually putting enough effort into all the sets of the compound movements. Because obviously accessories have their place, right? I don't believe in going extremely heavy on a lot of accessories. I go heavy enough to feel it because, in my opinion, accessories, it's about mind muscle connection. It's about fixing imbalances you might have. And obviously, you want to strengthen weaker muscles, but like, do you need to do 150-pound dumbbell rows? Probably not. Like, I've seen people do 150 dumbbell bench, and they can't even bench 315. 130, 150 kilos. So like, I believe that there's parallels, but I believe in the moderate approach because if you're beating especially if you've already expended a lot of energy and effort on the compounds, it's going to be hard to match that with the accessory. Like if I deadlifted 1,000 pounds today, then I did 150-pound dumbbell rows, like that's just going to further fatigue me. Like do 80s, do 100s, but that's like my sweet spot where I like doing sets of 8 to 12, and I keep it moderate because I've had friends who've hurt themselves. I've had friends who've hurt like torn muscles or ligaments doing accessory movements after their compound movements. And I don't think that should ever happen because you should never go heavy where you could possibly get injured, doing supplementary exercises, like this is my opinion. Like there's multiple ways to skin a cat. Like obviously you have to provide enough stimulus, but that's why I think I've been doing this almost 10 years and I've had a few muscle strains here and there, but never had a serious injury because I listen to my body and know when to push things.
Okay. How often do you train? I correct myself. How often did you used to train deadlift in the past? And what about now?
So I predominantly train deadlift once a week. I tried last time was a year and a half ago. Like I've tried bouts of doing deadlifting twice a week. And I don't know, it would just make me beat up, even if I did a lighter day. It works for some people. Like I believe in a lot of cases it works for people, but especially as I've gotten stronger, it just doesn't. Like I could do enough sets in one workout and then allow the recovery. Like doing a lighter deadlift variation after my main squat day, I just never saw anything truly in that. I know a lot of people deadlift twice a week. Some like even do it 3 times a week. I believe in the very beginning, I believe that makes sense because obviously when you're first starting out, you want to get the mechanics and get the muscle memory and learn how to lift very early on. But as you get more advanced, more isn't always better. It's funny because it's like I used to think that years ago. I'm like, oh, if I can squat 3 times a week, I'm going to improve faster than if I squat twice a week, and if I get bench 3-4 times a week and somehow stay healthy, then I'm going to get more results. But that happens to a fault, right? Because then if you can't handle it, you end up hurting muscles and stuff. You got to like figure out for your own body, like how much volume and frequency you can handle. it's different for everybody. I've trained with a lot of successful guys, you know, who squat once a week, some do twice a week. Don't know a lot of do 3 times a week. But, you know, everybody kind of figures out their buffer zone of like what's ideal for them, because you find out very quickly, because if you're not recovering, you'll know. If you start, like, I remember I squatted 3 times a week for a small period of time. My shoulders, like, oh my God, it just hurt to get on the bar. So you figure out in certain ways, like, okay, maybe this is a little too much, I'll cut it back. Or maybe you could add something. But that's why you just got to you got to experiment, you know? Like if you're in an off season or you're just not near a meet, then maybe try that's what I did. Try deadlifting twice a week. Did it for 6 weeks, and I was like, yeah, I don't see crazy results with this. I don't think it's going to be beneficial, especially as I like get close to a meet.
Okay, so you have been training deadlift once a week for most of your career.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you, and I think that most of the things you said can be explained by the fact that you lift such heavy weights, and there's no way you can deadlift like 3 times a week if you deadlift 1,000 pounds every time. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
There are, as you said, there are people who can train with much more frequency, but they are not deadlifting that kind of weight. They are deadlifting like maybe even less than half of what you deadlift. So, you know, the stress on the body is completely different.
And the one thing too I noticed, this is a factor that kind of you learn through time, is like the genetics in terms of fast and slow twitch. Because like if you ever see me lift, I'm very, very fast twitch. Like I'm very like I just posted today. You'll probably see it after this, because yesterday, so I posted my last warm up, which was 420 kilos, 904. I think it's 420. No, 450. 415. Sorry, I'm American. You know, trying to decipher 410 to 415 was my last warm up, and then I just posted. I did 445 kilo. It was 980, and what was I trying to say with this? Where was I going with this? What was I just saying before?
The recovery aspect of training that heavy. Well, the thing is, I think you were trying to say the fact that if you train with such heavy weight, you need a lot of more time to rest between sessions. There's not enough time to recover if you train deadlift 3 times a week. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Because right now I'm obviously in a heavy. Now I know what I was gonna say, because I'm extremely fast with. So like, because I did the 980 and it was easy, but because I created a little too much tension through the floor and I was a little too fast off the ground, the weight came off the ground. I basically paused it in a way. Like the plates came a half inch off the ground. I held position and then I lifted it. But at lockout, because my hips shot up slightly, like my lockout wasn't as good. And it's like a lot of times I have to tell myself, like the only thing I really think about right now, because I've been doing this so long, I don't need to think about spreading the floor, bracing. That's all that's all hardwired in my brain, because I've done thousands of reps the same way. But it's like I almost have to tell myself to calm down and hold back, because I'm so explosive. That's almost a detriment at times, you know, because you want to be explosive, but you also need to be in control. I mean, this is more of a sumo thing. Like a conventional, it's not really a problem. You know, in conventional, you can be really aggressive and explosive, and it's probably not going to hurt you. But when you're in sumo, it's like I said, the weight, it was easy. Like it was so easy, but because I pulled too much slack, my back, I slightly bent forward before I pulled, and that affected my lockout. Like when I did conventional, you know, I could pitch forward and like get back in position mid pull, but with sumo, you can't. I mean, especially with a deadlift bar, good luck trying to do that.
Exactly.
You're gonna lose balance, or a lockout. It's gonna not be there. You know.
It's become much more of a skill thing. You know, you need to be in the exact position especially with the kind of weight you have and the amount of bending in the barbell and the oscillation you have. and the leverages you have, because you are wide, you can achieve a very upright position only in a certain way. So if you achieve that position, you are strong as hell. But if you are not in that position, as you told before, maybe your hips goes up a little bit, then it's over.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell people. It's like when it's on, it looks so easy, but if one little thing's off, that's why like a lot of workouts, you know, I'm just like slightly out of position, and the weight will move fine, but that doesn't matter if you're not in a position to catch the weight and lock it out, and you can maintain that.
Yeah, and it becomes extremely dangerous in a way, because if you move a little bit over, just an inch, you know, there are 1,000 pounds, so the leverage becomes, you know, just moving the bar in a sumo position, just moving the bar a little bit over or changing the position a little bit makes a big difference. So it's like in the bench for a big arch bencher, you know, it's like magic. If you stay in the exact position you want, everything is fine, everything's work fine, and it seems like you can do for 10. But if you move a little bit, or the shoulder goes up a little bit, or you lose a little bit of the arch, no way, you're done. The shoulder goes like this, and it's extremely heavy on the shoulder then.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating. Like, it's like I said, I know why it happened, but it's like next week when I do my last heavy pull, I'm gonna have to really be in control. Like, you know, I'm gonna do over 1,000 next week, and so I know I don't need to put as much. Like, I don't need to be too. I'm at the point now where even upwards of 1,000 pounds, I'm putting like 40 to 50% of my effort into breaking the floor, because any more than that, like I said, the weight can come off, it can shift me forward, which it tells me I've gotten stronger, but it also means I have to be a lot more patient now. You know, I can't let my adrenaline and, you know, the moment get the best of me. So yeah, it was kind of funny because afterwards I was like, that felt easy, but it also fell off. And then I saw the video. You could just see the plates come off the ground, and then it brings me forward. And then I try to reach. And plus, in a meet, you can't do that anyway, because if the plates come off the ground prematurely, that's a no. Like, in most federations, at least, that's a grounds for a DQ of the lift, automatic red lights. So, yeah, it's just the deadlift. It's like the Texas deadlift bar was created, I think, like 2 decades ago, somewhere like that. And now with the kabuki is like, it's different. I don't know, like the knurling's different. Obviously, it's more aggressive, but like when you pull the slack out, it's just how it oscillates. Like you said, oscillates. It's just a different. It's crazy because I haven't lifted on Texas in like a year. After this meet, I'm probably just going to lift on a Texas for a few months.
Okay.
Just to save my hands a little bit, just because it's less bend.
Okay. Before talking about bars, let me. I will ask you a little bit of time to translate for the listeners, and then we'll talk a little bit about bars, because it's very interesting for me, the deadlift. Ok, ho chiesto, riassumo un attimino perché abbiamo parlato un pochino. Ho chiesto un pochino come gestisce la frequenza di allenamento dello stacco, e Dani mi diceva che sostanzialmente per la quasi totalità della sua carriera si è allenato con uno stacco solo a settimana, e che ha provato, ha sperimentato un pochino a fare anche magari un secondo stacco leggero dopo lo squat, cose di questo tipo, però non ha mai funzionato, non si è mai trovato bene. Allora abbiamo un po' parlato del fatto che sì, ci sono persone che si trovano molto bene anche con frequenze più alte, però come prevedibile, come io già altre volte ne ho parlato sul podcast, se si tratta di queste dimensioni di pesi, di quei pesi di questa portata, cioè gente che fa 400 rotti chili di stacco, non puoi pensare di fare volumi elevati e alte frequenze, non funziona, perché lo stress che ti impone sul corpo è troppo grande, ti serve più tempo per recuperare. E quindi mi diceva che lui sostanzialmente, essendo che insomma, si allena da una decina di anni, ha una tecnica abbastanza consolidata e non deve più di tanto pensare a fare determinate cose, ma gli vengono automatiche, sente anche meno il bisogno di fare lavoro tecnico leggero spesso, e quindi gli funziona bene una frequenza un po' più bassa sullo stacco. Non abbiamo ancora parlato delle altre alzate, abbiamo parlato dello stacco. Poi ci siamo persi un pochino via a parlare di quello che succede con lo stacco, con il bilanciere elastico a questi pesi qui, e quindi il fatto che è facile perdere magari la posizione, è facile perdere un attimo l'allineamento, per gli stacca sumo con quei pesi elevati, il bilanciere fette molto oscilla e quindi è un attimo che magari una ripetizione venga molto bene esplosiva e facile, che lui la sente comunque molto bene perché dice che è comunque molto esplosivo, però magari se una ripetizione dopo o se va troppo aggressivo perde un attimo il posizionamento, diventa un macello, diventa anche pericoloso perché se si sposta un attimino il bilanciere o perde un attimo la posizione con quel tipo di pesi diventa dura, no? Abbiamo fatto anche dei parallelismi con la panca, con chi fa archi molto, molto grandi e a poco ROM, che è un po' come un gioco di prestigio, è un po' come una magia, cioè finché tu sei perfettamente messo bene in posizione, tutto funziona bene, il peso va bene facile. Basta un attimo perdere l'assetto della posizione, magicamente da un peso che ne fai 10, fallisci miseramente alla prima perché tutto funziona fin tanto che mantieni il posizionamento, no? Per lo stacco suo in particolare è molto così. E un piccolo appunto mi diceva che sostanzialmente non ha praticamente mai avuto grossi infortuni in 10 anni di allenamento. Dopo mai gli chiedo meglio, ma in 10 anni che si allena, ha detto stando attento a non forzare troppo la mano, prendersi sul tempo di recupero, non aumentando troppo il volume, bene o male, a parte qualche stiramento, qua e là non ha avuto grossi problemi. Ehm, L'unica cosa che è cambiato nello stacco e dello dello stacco è che all'inizio faceva veramente, veramente poco volume, poi negli ultimi tempi ha iniziato a fare magari serie da 5, 6, 7 ripetizioni anche come back off, fare un pochino di roba in più, non tante robe, ma i 4-5 serie, però questo l'ha aiutato molto e ha detto che pianifica di fare 1100 libre, che sono circa 500 kg di stacco qua nel prossimo futuro. Alright, let's talk about deadlift bars.
Yeah, you saw like I didn't realize my background was what it was before, so I changed it, so it's just my room now.
Oh, it's fine, you can have whatever, don't worry.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the deadlift bar and the difference. You already told me a little bit about this, the difference between the Texas bar and Kabuki bar. Maybe if you want, you can also talk about the difference you have in the performance between stiff bar and deadlift bar.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of people think, you're just gonna start like if you use a stiff bar, you'll get on a deadlift bar, and it'll just be easier, and you'll magically put weight on the bar. But it's a lot more timing involved. Because, like I said, it's like when you use a deadlift bar, the whip, if you don't pull the slack out right, it could shoot you, it could pull you forward. Obviously, it can be an advantage if you learn how to use it, but that takes time. A lot of it took me like a year when I first started using the deadlift bar to kind of figure out how to get it right. And some people will say whether it's like should be a thing or not, but at this point, at least the tech like a deadlift bar has been in powerlifting, at least in a lot of feds for so long. It's just there's not one unified body, unfortunately. So it's just like it would be impossible to just get rid of it. I hate saying that, but it's not like if we were like there's too many damn feds, I heard from somewhere there's like 60 or 70 different feds in the entire world. A lot of them are just very low key feds that no one ever really competes in. But that's what makes it hard to try to make rules that are universal. Yeah, because the Texas deadlift bar, I had a decent time with that. And the Kabuki, like I said, it's like you almost gotta be less aggressive with it. You can't be if you're too aggressive, it's gonna expose you and pitch you forward. Yeah, it's kind of been my experience. It's just the heavier the weight is, the more you almost have to be more patient off the ground because it's deceiving because you can pull out more slack, so you think you're going to explode off the ground. Like the whip will catch you, or like what happened with me yesterday, it'll affect my lockout because my hips pop forward. Because it'll be easier to break off the ground, obviously, because you could create more tension by pulling the slack up, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not in ideal position to lock out to catch the weight. You got to be because of how it oscillates. You can't just think you're going to do it explode extremely fast and not have it catch you at the top. And you're the lockout of the lift.
Yeah, also I realized there is a changing style of the deadlifting with the deadlift bar, because if you watch the old videos about 10 12 years ago, a lot of American lifters were very 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 aggressive off the floor with the deadlift bar, and they just ripped the bar from the floor. But now very very few people deadlift heavy like that. Very few people. Most of the people, they take their time to set the position
Yeah,
right, especially in sumo.
yeah. I started 10 years ago. I remember back then there was a bunch of like old school like video compilations. God, I still watch those sometimes, even though they're like 12, 13 years old. It would show like the best deadlifts, regardless of weight classes, smaller, bigger lifters, the best deadlifts at the time that people were doing. And like you said, you could see the difference.
Mhm.
And that brings up another point because it's funny because sumo, I remember when I started 10 years ago, it almost was like, I, I think everyone should start with conventional because it's the fundamental, right? It's the like, I don't, I've heard very few people start with sumo first when they start deadlifting because normally when you get introduced to deadlifting, it's at a local gym. And obviously, most people are doing conventional there. Um, but like sumo blew up in popularity probably the last 5 years, in my opinion, because of TikTok, Instagram, and obviously me, Jamal Browner, a lot of these people who are breaking records and they're doing it sumo. So it is kind of a trend. I don't want to say a trend or fad, but like more people are wanting to try it now. And the more people that try it who are potentially going to be good at it, they're going to stick with it because they're going to realize they're better at it. Because when I started, it was almost like you didn't do sumo unless you were like a smaller lifter, because I was 100 kilo, like bigger dudes didn't do sumo back then. A lot of them, like when I say bigger, once you get over 100, 110 kilo, 125 kilo, 140 kilo, like there wasn't any big dudes pulling sumo because either they didn't have the mobility or it was just like back then it's like, okay, you're a bigger guy. Like you don't do sumo. That's for like women and lightweight men, At least that's what I felt because I would watch all these videos and I always see the trend. I'm like, okay, like most people who do sumo are either women, because they're more mobile than men, a lot of them. And it'd be, 60, 70, 80 kilo guys, maybe some 100 kilo men, but I would never see bigger guys do sumo. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do conventional because that seems to be what most of them do. And then the reason I even tried sumo is I hurt my back deadlifting when right when I started getting over 700 pounds. I didn't know how to brace properly. So obviously my back was taking, like, once again, you learn things the hard way sometimes, And thank God it wasn't, I don't think I bulged the disc or anything. I just, my low back was killing me because I wasn't bracing properly and creating pressure. So obviously at heavy weights, my back was rounding too much. I didn't know how to pack my lats. So, I rehabbed my back. And then when I got back into deadlifting, someone recommended, hey, maybe you should try sumo. And I've always been a lower body dominant. I've always had big legs, big quads. So I was like, why not? I mean, I got nothing to lose. I can't really lift heavy right now. And that's how I got introduced to sumo. That was like 2014, maybe right before 2015. So yeah, it's kind of funny that the whole shift now, like I said, now it's like pretty common. It's honestly probably more people do sumo than conventional.
Yeah, in IPF for sure.
Oh yeah, especially IPF, USAPL. Uh,
Mhm.
but even untested now, yeah, because it's like I said, when you see all the people doing big lifts and they tend to do it a certain way, then a lot of people are at least going to try it. Now, obviously, not everybody's meant to do sumo. I don't believe that. I'm not on the philosophy. And same with hook grip. Like I've done hook grip for almost 10 years, and I like hook grip. I believe it's good, but like some people are honestly better reverse grip for various reasons. Once again, a
Mhm.
hook grip is even a bigger fad. I remember when I started doing hook grip 10 years ago, everyone thought they're like, dude, it's so much harder. Like how you're doing double overhand. Obviously, like they didn't know what it was, but like hook grip hook grip was so foreign back then, and then now, just like with sumo, dude, everybody's doing hook grip, and it's funny because I still remember when I started, people were telling me, dude, like you should just stick with because I was getting bicep pain from airport, like my underhand would keep reversing out when I'd lock out, and my lat and bicep were getting a lot more stress on one side. But I was like, man, I don't want to tear a bicep. So that's when I started doing hook grip. And it took a while to figure out hook grip too. I've been doing it ever since.
Ok, abbiamo parlato un attimino della differenza tra bilanciere rigido e bilanciere, diciamo, da stacco flessibile. In particolare facciamo un po' la differenza tra la Texas dell'East Bar e quella della Kabuki, sono due marchi diversi. Quella della Kabuki, adesso io non l'ho mai provata, quella della Kabuki, ma è probabilmente molto più flessibile, e è quella che si usa, cioè si vede spesso usare di recente. E parlavamo un po' di come sia importante prendersi il tempo dal pavimento per partire, per essere sicuri di essere in posizione, perché è un attimo sostanzialmente beccare male il ritorno del bilanciere, perché prima cede, si piega molto e poi si alza il peso e oscilla molto. E dopo una cosa curiosa di cui parlavamo è il fatto che negli anni è cambiato il modo di far stacco delle persone, anche molto molto forte, con il bilanciere elastico, con il bilanciere da stacco, perché se noi andiamo a vedere i video vecchi di 10-12 anni fa di chi faceva stacco, quelli molto forti, non so, atleti famosi portati che si trovano su YouTube, quasi tutti davano dei tironi assurdi, cioè perché praticamente non si prendevano il tempo come fanno tanti adesso di mettersi in posizione, loro si attaccavano le mani e partivano estremamente esplosivi, dando praticamente uno strattone iniziale. E questo, come sottolineava Danny, aiuta molto a far piegare il bilanciere in partenza, però è estremamente rischioso dopo perché ti fa perdere la posizione, o se non becchi bene il ritorno elastico del bilanciere è un attimo incasinarsi, oppure sì, il bilanciere si alza un po' meglio in partenza, però ti trovi poi in una posizione che vai peggio dopo. Quindi sostanzialmente notavamo come negli ultimi anni la maggior parte delle persone sono diventate molto più pazienti nel sistemarsi bene, nel partire con più calma, e lui si deve sforzare volutamente di essere più paziente, di essere messo bene, di essere più graduale, meno, diciamo, impulsivo nel partire con lo stacco, perché poi sennò viene penalizzata la prestazione quando il bilanciere si solleva, dopo si trova in cattiva posizione. Poi abbiamo fatto un po' una panoramica di sumo rispetto a regular, diceva sostanzialmente che un discorso simile c'è stato anche col sumo. Lui ha iniziato col sumo perché si era fatto male la schiena, e quindi ha iniziato col sumo e da lì dopo si è trovato bene. E, ma all'inizio, tempo fa, il sumo era una cosa fatta da poco, soprattutto dai più leggeri, e- mentre adesso è molto molto più diffusa anche da persone molto pesanti, anche nelle categorie non testate, quindi dove c'è la possibilità di utilizzare farmaci, cosa che una volta era molto raro trovare atleti molto forti, molto grossi nelle federazioni untested che facevano sumo, non era frequente. Però dicevamo come probabilmente è anche una questione un po' culturale, un po' una questione di tempo da dedicarsi per far pratica con questo tipo di cose, perché non è così intuitivo la posizione del sumo, e lui diceva che secondo lui non è neanche per tutti. Poi abbiamo fatto un po' due accenni al discorso della presa. Mi diceva che lui utilizza la presa a uncino e che anche là ci ha messo un pochino a prendersi la mano, a abituarsi, e tutti quanti la vedono come una cosa strana. Adesso è molto molto più utilizzata perché un po' tutti si copiano a vicenda, però lui l'ha utilizzata principalmente per evitare tutto l'effetto elicottero, diciamo, no? Cioè le rotazioni del bilanciere, e per timore di farsi male al bicipite nella mano supinata. Però, come lui stesso dice, è una cosa soggettiva che dopo dipende da caso a caso. Um, it was interesting the fact that you told me that you need some time to master the skill with the deadlift bar if you come from the stiff bar. And you know something, I have a deadlift bar here in my home gym. I compete in the IPF. I've always been training with a stiff bar, or even stiffer bar than the competition bar. Most of the Italian people here train with a stiff bar, and it's a common thing here to believe that with the deadlift bar, it's much easier and you can deadlift like a lot of weight more. And a very interesting aspect of this is that the fact that every time some people came here to my house and tried, they were very frustrated of the results, because with lighter weight, they feel it easier, especially on the floor, of course, in sumo and so on. But all of them, they had some troubles with the lockout or the position, or the oscillation and stuff like that. So in the best case scenario, they did the same performance, and some of them did worse. They prefer the stiff bar. Of course, I'm not saying that it's easier with the stiff bar, but I mean, the fact is you need some time to practice, and it's different.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it'd be interesting. Honestly, maybe when I'm in a long off season, I might just mess around with a stiff bar for a minute. Because I think honestly, I could probably, I think I could pull 420 to 440 range on a stiff bar. Because there's various factors. Like my stance will be in some. Obviously, I couldn't go as wide, but with a stiff bar, I could be more aggressive, which would be to my advantage because I'm very like extremely fast twitched, and it's like with a deadlift bar, I have to hold back to make sure my position stays put, or else I'm screwed. Just like I told you happened yesterday. Yeah, I mean that was the same thing with me. It's like once again, it's deceiving because the extra bend in the bar, it's going to feel easier off the ground, and you're going to get excited, and you're going to want to rip it off the ground. Like I said, at lockout, it can pitch you forward, or you just lose control, or even some people even fall back too. It's like if you're a lifter who tends to sit a little bit back when you lock out, which isn't a bad thing, like with a deadlift, any kind of a deadlift bar, it's almost like a different motor pattern. You have to slightly, that's why I tell people, they're like, why don't you train on like a stiff bar in the off season? Because it would almost be like a different technique. And it's like, if I train on a stiff bar, even though I could see the benefit, less flexion, you know, it could build up my strength. But then if I transition back to a deadlift bar, then it's like I'm having to figure out, okay, what did I do before? Like, what were the little technical changes? Because how I lift with a stiff bar will not be how I approach lifting with a deadlift bar. It's a completely different dynamic. And I've heard of some great deadlifters in the past who would do this, though. A lot of them are conventional pullers, though. And I'm going to be honest, like, the deadlift bar, it seems like with conventional pullers, it's obviously a change, but with sumo, it's even bigger because with sumo, you can take advantage of a deadlift bar more with sumo. But like I said, it's because it's even more technical, you know? That's just my opinion. Because if you're a conventional puller, you could probably do a lot of stiff bar work and then transition over like 15, 16 weeks out for a meet and be fine. Have a few weeks, get the hang of because the whip isn't really going to affect the position as much in conventional as much as sumo. That's something I figured out years ago. I mean, obviously, I'd be lying to you if I haven't figured it out and it benefits me, but there's still times where it gets me sometimes. Even with how long I've been doing this, there's still workouts where the whip gets me. And it's like, you know, even with all the experience I have, you still got to be like observant while you're warming up. And even when I'm lifting, it's like I've learned, like when I lift, I'm not very raw hyped. Like I'm not a very aggressive, like, you know, some people they'll headbutt and do all the stuff. It's like I like to be in control because at heavy weights, even in squat and bench, you ever see someone get too psyched up and it's like they're just like they're being super explosive, but then bar comes towards the face, or the bar's here. If they were cognizant enough, they bring it back towards them. But because they're so just like they're so psyched up, they're not mentally able to react to something, you know? Like you need to find that level of psyche. Like I said, some people do benefit from being more aggressive. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm like this neutral. I'm stimulated mentally. Like in my head, I'm in the zone. But when you see pictures and videos of me at meets, I just look like I'm kind of just like in the moment. But it's because I'm mentally just getting it. I'm mentally getting it in, and I'm not like walking around and just, you know, like I love all the videos where it's like lifting's like going to war or something. I'm like, it's not. I'm not saying that just because I've been military so long, but like I love when people get animated. It's cool to watch, but like I don't know. I've never had that kind of mindset. Like I tried like early on in powerlifting back when the OGs of untested, like Pete Rubish, George Lehman, all these people, they're like, oh, like, and I was like, damn, do I have to get like this to be strong? You know? And then after a while, like, yeah, this is just too much. It's just I psych myself up to the point where I'm like, I don't know. And then, like I said, I miss a weight not because I couldn't get it, but because I was so mentally just trying to get in this place that I guess was like not needed to be.
I think there is just a sweet spot in the middle. You need to be enough psych up to be aggressive, but not that much to mess up your technique. You know the graph, the curve.
Yeah.
Just in the middle. If you go over, you start doing a lot of mistakes and technical mistakes. So going back to the stiff barbell, you told me before 420 to 440 is around the weight you think you can deadlift with the stiff bar, right?
Yeah, I'd have to train, and that wouldn't just be me doing it tomorrow. I'd have to train 4-6
Yeah,
months.
of course, of
Like I
course.
said, I have to figure out because I've been lifting on a stiff bar in like 4 or 5 years since I started lifting, with a deadlift bar. So it would take time, but I'm confident I could get up to that range. But then, because now there is meets I could do possibly with a stiff bar, but I don't see a point because like it's not like when you go on open powerlifting or these record sites, it doesn't say 950 with a like an untested you can use a deadlift bar. So like I don't get brownie points for using a stiff bar, and obviously I can lift more with a deadlift bar. So I'm gonna,
Of course. Yeah.
people have told me that before a lot of times on Instagram, like, oh, the number one common thing, what could you pull on a stiff bar? I'm like, I gave you that range, but like ultimately, I mean, it's not like even if I were to do that in a competition, no one would care. Like, because they're
Of
like, well,
course.
your PR is 1070 though, but it's 950 on a stiff bar. It's like, once again, it's cool in its own way, but it's not going to matter in terms of records. Like I said, drug test is different because they've used a stiff bar from the inception and continue to. Uh, but untested is not like that because we've had a deadlift bar for over 2 decades. So it's not that you can't judge them the same. Like if someone drug tested, went to some fed and used a deadlift bar, that's kind of controversial, you could argue, because all the people in the IPF, USAPL, all that, they don't use a deadlift bar. And all the best lifters are in those feds, the drug test aside. But kind of like it's funny how that works. Like depending on which side you talk about determines, yeah.
And how much do you think you can deadlift regular now? Not now, but if you take your time to practice a little bit.
Yeah. So right now I'm about 2.5 weeks out from a meet. So next week I'll do like 1,010, 1,020 in training. Last year I did 1,003 in training and pulled 1,074. So I'm thinking, I don't know. Me and my coach still got to talk about the game plan. I do want to go take a run at 1,100, but it's one of those things where, kind of like I told you earlier, like it'll happen when it's meant to happen. So not gonna like. That's the problem is you go to meets and you have the set number in your head, but depending on how the day goes, you gotta. It's first you do your opener, then your second. Like you can't. If you're already thinking about your third before your opener, like okay, like if your opener doesn't move great or something happens, then you may have to adjust your game plan. So it's one of those things where I want to do 1,100. I feel like I'm capable of it. I feel like my training this press has been pretty good. Like I said, the whip is just something I have to really. And I don't even know. Like when I go for 1,100, it's like God knows what that whip's gonna feel like. Like that's like I have no doubt I could get it. I'm gonna break the floor with and whatnot. But once it gets to my knees, like being able to, I'm gonna have to hold it for like a second or two to stop the whip from oscillating. Not like even with a Texas, that wasn't really an issue. With a stiff bar, it's not an issue at all. The moment you lock out, you're probably gonna get a down command faster because you're gonna show you're locked in. Like with a kabuki, it's like I have to hold it for over a second before I'm completely. And you could be locked out and erect, but if the bar is still doing this, they're probably gonna. A lot of them will make you hold it longer. So that's really going to be the main thing is that lockout, controlling the whip, and keeping put until it settles down, which is easier said than done. But I'm strong enough off the floor. That much is obvious. Like the 980 I did today, I'm like, okay, my leg strength, my floor speed is there, but I also have to trust the fact that I have to keep my hips in position the whole time. I can't get excited and have them start shooting up because it doesn't matter if I break the floor or get it to my knees if I'm not in a position to successfully lock it out. That's like the biggest thing for me right now.
How much of a gap do you think you have between your sumo and regular deadlift?
Um, I've done like 820 conventional. That was just an off season. I could do over 900 conventional if I like prioritized it. Because in the off season, and I tell people this all the time, like you can't lift. I mean, you already know this. You can't lift big weight. Like if I did over 900 year round, like I wouldn't last very long. Like like it's like you got to go through like periods of like you work on your work capacity. You're just giving yourself body a break. Like you can't probably 6 months of the year. I'm not going over 900. Even though my PR is well over 1,000. I mean, in the off season, I push squat and bench harder. And I find different ways to challenge myself. I'll do conventional, or this next prep or this next off season. I want to do different variations to give me a challenge, but not have to put as much weight on the bar because your CNS, and once you get in your body, you need at the highest levels of untested, whoever makes it to the meet isn't destroyed. Normally has a good chance because a lot of dudes show up to the meet, they're already battling injuries. They're just, they have these huge goals and then shit happens and they get tweaks and strains. So if you were just smart with your training and you do your best, but also you make it to the meet healthy, you already got a pretty damn good shot. Like it's like a lot of other sports. Like if you could just keep your body together, because when you're at a high level, everyone has similar strength levels. You're all at a similar pace, but it's usually whoever showed up to the meet and is healthy, like consistent. Especially when there's money on the line. Like a big money meets, that always tends to happen. People open too heavy, or people bomb out. Like, oh, I got to win this 10, 20 grand or whatever it is.
Ok, ho chiesto a Danny un attimino una panoramica sulle differenze tra bilanciere rigido e bilanciere flessibile e come penso di fare con l'altro bilanciere, questo genere di cose qui. Allora, abbiamo un po' divagato, però mi sono segnato giù due numeri e mi diceva che quello che pensa di fare, ovviamente dopo un certo periodo per riprendere la mano con il bilanciere rigido, è circa un 420-440 kg di stacco sumo, che sono circa 10% in meno di quello che ha fatto, della sua migliore alzata col bilanciere flessibile, perché ha fatto un 4,88, che è il record mondiale che ha col bilanciere flessibile, e mi dice appunto che ha cominciato a fare i 4,20, 4,40 se si prende un po' di tempo per abituarsi col bilanciere rigido. La cosa curiosa però è che mi diceva che sostanzialmente non ne vede granché di beneficio nel farlo, e tanti gli hanno suggerito anche magari di provare a fare dei mesi dove fa col bilanciere rigido, eccetera, però lui diceva che sono molto diversi i due esercizi. Secondo me sono così tanto diversi proprio perché fa così tanto peso e quindi c'è tanta differenza perché il bilanciere riflette tanto di più. Però diceva appunto che la tecnica è diversa, le abitudini su come spingere sono diverse, gli angoli sono diversi, tutto quanto, ci vuole tempo per abituarsi a passare da un bilanciere all'altro, e quindi non è così convinto che possa avere dei benefici, e poi il ritornare al bilanciere elastico potrebbe essere insomma una cosa che ci vuole a sua volta del tempo e potrebbe essere problematica, che è un po' lo stesso ragionamento che si fa a volte tra il sumo e il regular, no? Nel senso che tanti fanno il sumo e pensano, beh cazzo, potrei fare un po' di regular, un po' di tempo, mi rinforzo e poi torno al sumo e ne raccolgo i benefici. A volte funziona, a volte no, perché comunque le due cose sono molto diverse, ok? E uno ha bisogno di tempo per passare da una all'altra, abituarsi e capirsi. Un altro dato interessante, penso anche qui, con un po' di pratica, abitudine, di poter fare circa 900 libbre o comunque sopra le 900 libbre di stacco regular. Non li ha ancora fatti, nel senso che non ha avuto mai l'occasione di provare a mettersi lì a perderci tempo, però penso appunto di stare nel range 410 o giù di lì di regola, di poterli fare col bilanciere elastico. Poi sempre sul tempo per padroneggiare o meno questo tipo di bilanciere, io raccontavo degli aneddoti perché nella mia home gym, nella palestra qui, c'ho anche un bilanciere da stacco di quelli che flette, e io onestamente ci ho provato un pochino e si sente la differenza, si sente il beneficio. Chiaramente non posso avere l'esperienza di fare quasi 500 kg con quel bilanciere là, quindi non so cosa voglio dire con 500 kg, però richiede del tempo per padroneggiarla, per capirsi. Non è che scusate, non è che non è che è la prima volta, mamma mia, dai. Ok, sorry, non è che è la prima volta che uno la prova subito magicamente ci fa 10, 15, 20% in più di chili. E raccontavo come mi è capitato di ospitare delle persone a casa mia e fargli provare il bilanciere elastico e non è stato così semplice da padroneggiare, nel senso che qualcuno ci ha preso qualcosina, ma più o meno ha fatto uguale, ma la maggior parte non si sono trovati benissimo all'inizio, hanno fatto prestazioni non tanto diverse o addirittura peggio, nel senso che mai partivano bene o con pesi medio leggeri sembrava tanto più facile, poi quando tiravano si trovavano scomposti, si trovavano che non riuscivano a chiudere, che si sbilanciavano, cose di questo tipo. Poi ovviamente con il tempo se uno la padroneggia ci fa di più, come lui stesso diceva, non è che sta qua a raccontare fanzonie, eh, non ti danno punti extra o soldi in più o niente per fare la gara con il bilanciere rigido e quindi se si può usare quello flessibile, che è quello che di solito si fa nelle gare untested, lui lo usa perché appunto fa meglio che può e ovviamente ci fa più chini in quel modo lì, soprattutto quando non si abitua. Però appunto non è una cosa così scontata e così immediata, ci vuole pratica, come il sumo, no? Come passare da regola al sumo, qualche volta sì, è abbastanza veloce, si fa subito di più, qualcuno fa peggio, però la maggior parte dei casi serve del tempo per padroneggiare la cosa. Piccolo appunto su una delle divagazioni che abbiamo avuto, mi raccontava che anche sul tirare, andare pesanti, queste cose qui, lui tendenzialmente si fa diversi mesi all'anno dove fa una specie di off-season che magari va diversi mesi senza andare pesante oltre le 900 libbre, che significa per lui star sotto il 90% del suo massimale. E mi dice anche che fa anche 6 mesi di fila così, appunto per una questione di longevità, per non farsi male, eccetera. Mentre per quanto riguarda i suoi obiettivi prossimi, adesso ha 2 settimane e mezza avrà una gara e parlava un pochino di come pensa di fare, perché gli piacerebbe fare questi 1100 libbre, che sono appunto circa 500 kg, però ci sono notevoli difficoltà nel stabilizzare il bilanciere con tutto quel peso quando sei in chiusura, perché oscilla, si muove tanto, di conseguenza i giudici in gara ti tengono fermo un attimino di più perché vogliono vedere che il bilanciere sia fermo sotto controllo, e quindi insomma è un po' un casino. Okay, Danny, I would like to ask you about how do you feel it on your back and the difference you feel on the recovery aspect and on your joints using the stiff barbell or the deadlift barbell?
Yeah, so with a deadlift bar, like I said, if you find out how to if you can figure out how to pull the slack out right, you'll be more upright. Your position will be more vertical, as they say, But in my experience, helping out a lot of people with deadlifting, because like hundreds of people, they message me like, "Hey, look at my deadlift. Hey, give me tips." I can't answer all of them, but every once in a while, I'll try to answer some of them. But not everybody is meant to be like, depending on your leverages, it's okay to be slightly over the bar, because the way I see it is, however you start the lift, you want to be in the right position to finish the lift. So, like, if you start too vertical, but then your lockout, if you can't keep balance at lockout because you're trying to be too vertical, that's not optimal. But if you being more bent over at the hips and your torso angle, yes, maybe you're more over the bar at first, but then once it gets to your knees, you're able to lock your hips through efficiently. Whenever you figure out the position where once it gets to your knees, because in sumo, think about it, your legs are your feet are wider, right? So that's an advantage for the lockout because you're more open. So you need to figure out the position, the starting position, where you can achieve that the best, Because I tell people I'd rather be, honestly, like, I am very explosive, but if I had to pick, I'd rather be slow off the ground, but know I have it. Because, like I said, in sumo, too much speed isn't really a good thing. Like I said, I'm naturally very fast to it, so I have to cater towards what my advantages are. But like, I'm learning now I have to be more in control, because it doesn't matter how fast it comes off the ground, So with so you were saying, compared to a stiff bar or deadlift bar, how it
Yeah,
affects your body position. Which
not
obviously with a stiff bar, I wouldn't be able to get as upright. But over time, my back has gotten stronger. I did a lot of SSB squat work this off season. I think that's probably playing a part why I'm having the issues with pulling out too much slack, because my posterior chain is just leveled up in terms of, the strength I have in my posterior chain. So that was like early on, I was all legs. I didn't have very much upper body or posterior strength. So the way I deadlifted was more not getting exposed by my weaknesses. But now with a stiff bar, you're going to be more over the bar. But like I said, there's plenty of things you could do to strengthen your back. Like obviously any kind of an extension, like I don't say just hyperextension, but you know what I'm saying, multiple ways to strengthen your lumbar over time. A lot of it has to do with load management. Once again, it's hard in this day and age not to just full send every workout and go for a max, because obviously if you want to get reposted by any of these lifting pages, you know, you got to do something crazy, right? Or where I'm at now, even if I don't go heavy, they'll still repost me because I'm just so known now. But a lot of people want to go heavy too often because they want to get, and I get it, you know, you want to get some praise for what you're doing. You want to feel like you're getting somewhere. And obviously when, I don't know, any of these powerlifting pages post you, I remember the first time it happened 4 or 5 years ago, I felt pretty good. I was like, wow, you know, I'm getting pretty good now because now they're starting to repost me. But just, yeah, that's what I would say about, that's what I say about like stiff bar to deadlift bar. Your position will be slightly different. That's not a bad thing, but it's just knowing, okay, if I can't pull out slack because it's a stiff bar, then I'm going to have to figure out wherever I set my grip and start with, that's more or less going to be the position I'm going to lift from. I can't rely on the slack to sit back more and get more upright. It's not a bad thing. It's just it's a whole different mindset, you know? Because like I said, if I were to train on a stiff bar, I'd have to spend 4 or 6 months to figure out, like I said, how my position would be with the stiff bar and then go from there.
And do you think it's easier to recover with a deadlift bar? To recover, I mean, the stress on your body and the back.
Yeah, because I can get more upright, it's not going to take as much of a toll on my back. So in that regard, I would say the recovery is definitely better. I mean, even after what I did yesterday, I don't even feel really beat up right now. Obviously, I'm at the end of a prep, so fatigue is accumulating. But overall, I mean, considering I pulled 445, I was expecting to be pretty beat up, but I don't feel it's because my position was really good yesterday. So I wasn't putting unnecessary strain on my back. But whenever I have workouts where I'm pitching forward or my back is more bent over, I obviously feel it a lot more because I rely on my legs and my hips a lot in deadlift doing sumo. So when my form is off and sloppy or I'm rounding a lot in my back, I mean, that's where it goes back to every workout. You got to take it. Every workout, you got to like aim for perfection, but also be observant of the little things that are going on. Because I'll have periods of time where my form starts getting sloppy. And then in my head, I'm like, whatever, it'll sort itself out. That's not how. And then it comes back to haunt me because I'm like, damn, now I'm going heavy and I'm still making the same mistakes I did 4 or 6 weeks ago. But it's okay to have one bad workout. When you start to have multiple workouts that keep compounding and something is going on, you need to figure out are my hips shooting up, or am I not I don't know, am I not creating enough tension in the floor so everything's bad? Like it could be a multitude of things, but training always goes in waves. It's like the best. I saw this cool quote like 4 or 5 months ago where it said like the rule of thirds, I think it's called. A third of the time you'll feel great. A third of the time you'll feel horrible. A third of the time you'll be okay in terms of your training, how your body feels, how your lifts move, because you're not going to be perfect all the time. It's not going to be clicking all the time. Like if you're doing what needs to be done, like 1 in 3 workouts is going to be like that, you know, like a squat, bench, deadlift workout. Once a month, it'll feel great. Another workout, it'll feel okay, not great, not horrible. Be like, okay. Then you'll have those workouts that make you doubt if you're even doing anything right. But then the process just repeats itself, you know. When you lift for so long, you start to just realize that kind of trend, right? In the beginning, you're like, every workout has to be perfect. Every workout I have to put weight on the bar. But then as you get more seasoned of a lifter, you're just like, you know, there's times and places to do that, but you could have a good workout without setting a PR, you know? Like, wow, like I did 4 sets of 4 at this weight and I've never done it before, even though I did 4 sets of 4 at 700. I've never done that before. That's not crazy, but I still have some kind of metric. Like, you know what, this is still a good workout. Like I'm not setting a world record, but like you find a way to make every workout like meaningful in a way, you know?
Ho chiesto a Danny riguardo allo stress sul corpo e alla questione di recupero, cioè come cambia tra bilanciere elastico e bilanciere rigido. E allora abbiamo parlato un pochino ancora della tecnica di come cambia, di prendersi il tempo per partire da terra, insomma, mi ha un pochino ancora spiegato quelle cose che abbiamo detto prima. Però sostanzialmente mi diceva che essendo che col bilanciere elastico riesce a stare più verticale, perché il bilanciere ovviamente flette, cambia sufficientemente la posizione da permettergli di stare molto più verticale. E dopo, insomma, se vedete qualche video suo ve ne rendete conto, perché il bilanciere si flette tanto e lui diventa praticamente quasi in piedi dritto, e questo gli permette di subire molto meno l'usura delle alzate, e quindi mi conferma quello che insomma già pensavo, e volevo avere una sua opinione, che con il bilanciere elastico si riesca a tollerare un po' meglio, a recuperare un pochino meglio, mentre con il bilanciere più rigido lo sente un po' di più sul corpo, perché appunto è un po' più piegato, un po' più schiacciato, il rom è un po' più lungo, non riesce a verticalizzare così bene. Dopo mi parlava appunto di come molto cambia in base alla, al riuscire o no a mantenere la tecnica corretta, prendersi il tempo, insomma, faceva anche degli esempi su altri scenari dove magari qualcuno per andare pesante, per pubblicare qualcosa sui social media, eccetera, bisogna essere un attimino prudenti, e soprattutto bisogna riuscire a padroneggiare bene la tecnica, prendersi il tempo necessario, perché questo fa una grossa differenza a livello anche di, sì, non solo di prestazioni ovviamente, ma anche di stress sul corpo, di recupero. Ehm, Adesso penso gli domanderò qualcosa sugli infortuni, anche se immagino già un po' la risposta, perché mi aveva già accennato a qualcosa prima, e dopo bene o male non ci saranno altre grandi cose da aggiungere sullo stacco. Ehm,
Sorry. Was it
Okay.
multitasking?
Okay. Danny, what about injuries? You told me before you have been training for 10 years straight and you have no major injuries so far. Um, do you have something to tell us about injuries you have, or everything's fine?
I've strained my quad a few times, like, for upwards of a week, maybe it was in discomfort and then I would rehab it. I'm never trying to think besides that. I mean, muscles get tight and then I do body work, massage therapy for it. Um, I try to do a lot of active recovery. So on days I don't train, I try to get 8 to 10K steps in. Um, movement is health. Like, people used to think, oh, you just put an ice pack on it and it'll get better. But like, you got to just introduce movement whenever you can. That's kind of how I go about things now. Do a lot of like, when I warm up, I like to do a lot of stuff to get like if I bench, obviously I'll do pull aparts, things open up the shoulder. I like to do I'll do a few sets of press downs, a few sets of rows. I like to do a few exercises very light, just get blood flow in the muscle to kind of prime my body for what I'm about to do. And I think that helps me, like, because it every once in a while when I don't warm up as much as I usually do, that's when I start to feel stiff or like
Mhm.
potentially feel like I can get injured. Because when you get lazy and you don't want to do the little things that you need to keep you healthy, that's normally when I run into issues. So I've learned, like, I spend 10, 15 minutes warming up, but I do all these little things to get my body right. And that seems to play a good part. And a lot of it's just listening to your body. If
Mhm.
I'm going up to a certain weight, my gut's telling me something isn't right. I'm not going to push through it because if I end up hurting something, then I'm out 3, 4, 5 weeks instead of, okay, just have one bad workout and just do what you can and then be better next week.
Mhm. Do you have big changes on your strength level between pre-competition and off-season?
Yeah. So, like I said, like in off season, I'm probably going to do SSB squat mainly. Uh, I'll still do sumo, but mainly conventional. I just I'll do both of them. And then for
Mm.
bench, I don't know what we're doing for bench yet, but the weights get lowered. I just do more work capacity. I find different ways to challenge myself because just challenging yourself just with heavy weights all the time, that's not sustainable. I've seen it time and time again. A lot of the older lifters who were good 5, 10, 15 years ago, like you learn from people of the past, right? What they did, what worked, what didn't. Um, yeah, that's kind of how I go about it. Plus, off season's fun. It's not as it's mentally. It's not only physically, but for me, it's mentally stressful when I go heavy during a weight block. Like during a meet prep, because there's a lot that go wrong when you get above 80-90%. So the off season is just a good time to like build yourself back up, but also just work on imbalances, find different ways to challenge yourself, so that when it's time for meet prep, like I said, the SSB squats blew up my squat. It also helped my deadlift too, even though that's not a conventional back squat. And I wasn't doing it, like at most I did 650 to 700 range, or I think it was 660. So I wasn't doing as much of my normal back squat, but I still got a huge benefit out of it because, you know, SSB squat is more posterior chain dominant. I'm naturally very good in my legs. So it exposed a weakness I had, and I built on that weakness, and it was able to transfer over, and I saw good results, even though I was using less weight than my back squat, you know?
Yeah. Sì, ho chiesto a Danny per quanto riguarda gli infortuni e già un po' mi aveva anticipato prima, mi ha detto che sostanzialmente in questi 10 anni di allenamento non ha avuto grossi infortuni, ha detto che qualche volta, qualche stiramento, si è fatto male il quadricipite, ma nulla di estremamente serio, insomma qualche settimana di fisioterapia e di riabilitazione, ha detto che si prende comunque molto cura dell'aspetto preventivo e recupero con terapie, con altre cose. E lui è comunque molto un sostenitore del movimento, del stare attivo. Ha detto che magari tante volte uno pensa semplicemente di metterci un po' di ghiaccio sopra la zona che fa male e è finita lì, invece secondo lui è importante che ci sia movimento, e sono d'accordo, di fare cose attive, di restare attivo. Ha detto che cerca di stare sugli 8-10 mila passi al giorno, insomma tutta una serie di cose da un punto di vista prevenzione che insomma ne abbiamo parlato tante volte. Però la parte secondo me più inerente, diciamo, a livello di allenamento e programmazione che ci interessa qui dire è che si fa dei periodi dell'anno di off-season dove va molto più leggero, dove mai si assume che è regular e non va pesante, sta molto più leggero. Ha detto che ha visto tante volte, in tanti casi, persone che vanno pesanti tutto l'anno che dopo si fa male, quindi pensa che sia importante prendersi del tempo in cui si va più leggeri e magari fare anche esercizi un po' diversi, come può essere lui mi faceva l'esempio dello squat con la safety bar, che nel suo caso ha detto che l'ha aiutato molto, anche se i pesi in termini assoluti chili sul bilanciere erano molto più bassi rispetto alle sue capacità di squat low bar. Ha avuto dei benefici anche poi sullo stacco. Ha detto che gli ha aiutato a rinforzare la bassa schiena, a tenersi in salute, e che tutte queste serie di strategie, quindi no, di fare dell'off season, di non andare sempre pesante, di stare attento al recupero, di modificare un po' gli esercizi, cambiarli un po', non andare sempre sugli stessi, l'hanno aiutato molto a restare senza praticamente grossi infortuni in 10 anni, che se ci pensate, un atleta di questo livello che fa questi chili è un risultato stratosferico. Sicuramente c'è anche la genetica, però è un risultato notevole, quindi si vede che riesce a gestirla bene questa cosa qua. Inoltre una cosa molto molto importante che ha detto prima è che oltre alla classica frase no, bisogna ascoltare il proprio corpo, lui diceva che certe volte lo sente distinto, no, di pancia, che dice c'è qualcosa che non va oggi, basta così, e preferisco fare un allenamento di merda, nel senso che interrompo l'allenamento, lo finisco, lo faccio più leggero, però salvarmi da un infortunio, piuttosto che comunque allenarmi sopra lo stesso e poi magari stare fermo una settimana per l'infortunio. E questo ovviamente è una cosa che richiede un certo grado di esperienza per fare, ma ti salva da un sacco di problemi, è veramente una cosa importante. Well, Danny, I'm done with it. I have no more questions. If you want to add something, do you want to talk about something more?
No, I think we covered, sorry, I was eating up my meal. I think we covered a lot of good stuff today. Oh, one thing I want to say was I'm actually, well, I don't know how accurate it is. Like, I knew my mom's mom was Italian, so I'm technically a quarter Italian. Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know what part of Italy, like, yeah, my mom is half Italian. And can I do ancestry DNA? You know, there's those DNA things now. I knew I was Italian. I mean, my mom always told me how her mom was from Italy.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, like when you first reached out, I was like, of course I'm gonna do an Italian.
Have you ever been in Italy?
I want to go. I really do. I'm going to Australia in February for like a seminar and participate in their deadlift event. In the future, I definitely want to go to not only Europe, especially Italy, because you know I got roots. I got roots to a degree there, so that would be. Plus, I heard the food there is just like so much quality and better. You know, like,
that's true. The food here is different. And so your mom speak Italian?
No, she doesn't. I believe my grandma did, but it kind of wasn't. mean, she passed down the recipe, so the food's still in the household. But yeah, because growing up, my mom would make pasta, fettuccine, any kind of like. I used to eat bowls of that shit. Like, and I was like a string bean back then. I could eat so much damn food. Like, my mom would just make heaping portions. But yeah, those are some good times, man.
Let us know if you come to Italy.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely let you know. I want to. I'm getting out of the Marines in a few weeks. Then I'm starting. I already started online coaching, but once I move to where I'm going to live, I need to get. I'll start doing in-person coaching too, just to make money right away and get experience doing that. And once I'm settled in, I definitely want to take a trip out to Europe, Italy, that general vicinity. So.
Okay. Well, Danny, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. Where can people find you?
So on Instagram, I'm Dan_Griggs. I have Facebook too. I haven't really used it in the past, but I'm gonna start using it again. Just Danny Grigsby. Other than that, I don't have TikTok, or I do, but I don't really use it. So those are the two main platforms.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Danny. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.